With the summer break nearly over, I thought this was the perfect time to rank each driver's and team's season so far, to see who needs to improve and who has overachieved perhaps. Before the video starts, remember that I'm solely ranking them based on the season so far, and the ranking is totally subjective. You might have another opinion, which you are perfectly entitled to share in the comments below. The drivers and teams will be ranked within the classic tiers going from S all the way to F. Note that I won't be giving Hülkenberg a ranking, as it's unfair to judge him based on 2 races only. Alex Albon. I didn't know what to expect from the former Red Bull driver before the season, and he has definitely surprised me in a positive manner. He's beaten his teammate Latifi 10-3 in races and 11-12 in qualifying. He's the only Williams driver to have scored points this season, with 3 points next to his name, with his best finish being 9th in Miami. But the highlight of his season so far has to be his performance in Australia, where he had his only pit stop on the last lap of the race and was rewarded for his efforts with his first point of the season. A very solid first half of the season, earning him a place in the C tier of my list. Alonso. This ranking is purely for what the drivers have done on track, otherwise he would have gone into S tier for the shitstorm he caused at Alpine this off-season. In terms of on-track performances, Alonso is beating teammate Ocon 8-5 in qualifying, but the race is going in the French driver's favor as Ocon is leading that battle 8-5 funnily enough. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, Alonso is in 10th place, with 41 points helping Alpine beat McLaren for the 4th position in the Constructors' Championship. He's still one of the quickest qualifiers on the grid, proved by him starting in 2nd place in Canada, and his 5th place finish in Silverstone shows that he can still compete on Sundays. Although he has been very unlucky during races, which robbed him of big points, he is still 23 points behind teammate Ocon. Solid B tier for the 2-time world champion. Bottas. The ex-Mercedes driver has had a very solid start to the season, scoring points in 6 of the first 7 races, with Saudi Arabia being the exception where he suffered mechanical issues while driving in 9th. Since then, it seems like Zhou is catching up to him, and the Alfa Romeo has lost a bit of its pace. Comparing him to his teammate, he's still beating the Chinese driver 10-2 in races and 10-3 in qualifying, while also being responsible for 90% of the team's points. B tier, just behind Alonso. Gasly. After being one of the best, if not the best midfield driver last year, the Frenchman is struggling to find pace this season. This is mostly due to the AlphaTauri regressing from a solid midfield team to now only being the 8th or 9th fastest car on the grid. The highlight of his season has definitely been Baku, where he finished 5th. He's beating Tsunoda 8-5 in both races and qualifying and has 5 points more than the Japanese driver. This season looks like one to forget for Gasly. He goes into C tier behind Albon. Hamilton. The 7-time world champion struggled in the early stages of the season to adapt to the new car, but has found his form since, ending the first part of the season with 5 consecutive podiums dating back to Canada, where he finished 3rd. He finds himself 12 points behind teammate Russell in the Drivers' Championship, although he has been very unlucky at times with the safety car. He earns the first A tier of this video. Latifi. The Canadian has been woeful this season, with the only highlight being a Q3 appearance in Hungary. The fact that there has been rumors about him being replaced even before the Hungarian GP should tell you all about his season so far. Perhaps the easiest ranking of the video, with the Canadian going into F tier. Leclerc. Leclerc has been fantastic this season, mounting his first true world title challenge. If it wasn't for Ferrari's horrible strategy calls and engine issues, he could be leading the championship right now. His qualifying has been elite, with 7 poles in 13 races. The one mistake that has been his fault was in Imola, where he spun after overdriving the car. Goes into S tier. If he loses this championship, it won't be because of him. Magnussen. If this ranking would have been done after the Bahrain GP, Magnussen would straight go into S tier, for finishing 5th and only knowing that he will be driving for Haas during the last week of pre-season testing. After that, his form has dropped off, but so has the pace of the Haas. He finished 5 times in the points compared to his teammates who only finished twice inside the top 10. The Dane is also beating Schumacher 11-12 in qualifying, but he's made a lot of mistakes on Sundays, culminating in Schumacher beating him 7-5 in races. He still has 10 points more than his teammates, earning him a solid C tier in my ranking, just behind Albon. Norris. One of the best midfield drivers this season, he earned himself a podium in a bad McLaren. He remains as the only driver outside of the top 3 teams to earn a podium this season. In terms of races, he's beating Ricciardo 9-4, while it's even worse for Daniel on Saturdays, where he's beaten 11-12. Lando has 80% of the team's points and challenging the Alpines for P4 in the Constructors' Championship, a tier behind Hamilton. Ocon has been very solid this season, finding himself in 8th position in the Drivers' Championship. As always, he has been very consistent, but it feels like the car has the potential to be even better. Alonso's highs have been higher than those of Ocon, but at the same time the Spaniard's lows are lower than those of Ocon. A very solid B tier for the season so far. Arguments could be made for either Alonso or Ocon being better so far, but I'm giving the slight edge to Alonso. Pérez. The Mexican has quietly had a very solid season so far, proving himself to be an excellent number 2 driver for Red Bull. He's only 5 points behind Max's closest rival Leclerc in the driver's standing and hasn't put a foot wrong this season. The highlight of his season has been the excellent drive at Monaco, earning himself his first victory of the season. He faced technical issues in Bahrain and Canada and was punted off by George in Austria. Other than those 5 DNFs, his lowest finish of the season so far has been 5th, which just shows his consistency this season. Easy A tier for Checo. Ricciardo. What more can be said about Daniel's season? He hasn't been good. I've already talked about his record against Lando, and it could be argued that he is costing the team P4 in the Constructors' Championship. The highlight of the season has been Melbourne, and even there he finished behind Lando. McLaren announced that Ricciardo won't be driving for them in 2023, highlighting how bad his season has been. D tier. Russell. George has been one of the biggest surprises this season so far. I thought he was going to struggle a bit in the beginning of the season, but he has proven me and other doubters wrong. Instead, it was Hamilton who struggled early on. A lot has been already said about his consistency, as he finished in the top 5 in 12 of the 13 races so far. Add 5 podiums on top of that and you have a driver beating his 7-time world champion teammate. George goes into A tier, just missing out on S. Sainz. The start of his season has been poor, but the Spaniard has picked up form since. Compared to his machinery, Sainz should be doing better, although he's had his share of bad luck, like in Austria or even in Imola where he was punted off by Ricciardo. But Sainz also had very low moments, like his performance in Melbourne. Despite all of this, he still has 1 podium more than teammate Leclerc and even had his first win in Silverstone. He sneaks into A tier, just behind Lando. Schumacher. Judging solely based on Austria and Silverstone, Mick should be in the B tier. But we had 13 races this season, not 2. I've already talked about his struggles in qualifying against Magnussen and made a video going more into detail about his weak season so far. With his contract up at the end of the season, the German needs to find form quick, as there have been rumors stating that Haas might look elsewhere for 2023. D tier in front of Danny Rick. Stroll. Canada's F1 representation this season hasn't been great, and that's putting it lightly. Stroll hasn't improved his qualifying yet, and Vettel has had higher highs despite missing out on the first 2 races of the season. He also had multiple crashes like in Baku. F tier in front of Latifi. Tsunoda. While the Japanese driver has made a clear improvement compared to last season, he is still being beaten by his teammate. As mentioned with Gasly, the AlphaTauri isn't the same car as it was last year, which has kept the drivers from impressing. But even taking that into account, the season has been bad. His crash in Canada is one of the biggest mistakes of the season so far, and he finds himself in 16th place of the Drivers' Championship. D tier in between Mick and Ricciardo. Verstappen. There's not a lot to say about Max's season. He hasn't put a foot wrong this season, and other than a few reliability issues, Red Bull haven't either. With an 80-point lead, it's his championship to lose, S tier in front of Leclerc. Vettel. Due to no fault of his own, this season has been pretty unspectacular for Seb. He gets the best out of his car, which is only enough for a few points finishes here and there, with the highlight of the season being P6 in Baku. When comparing to his teammate, Vettel is beating Lance 8-3 in qualifying and 6-5 in races, with Vettel having 80% of the team's points. C tier for the German in between Magnussen and Gasly. Zhou. Another driver that surprised me this season with his pace, especially considering the fact that 10-time GP winner Bottas is his teammate. He's been unlucky with retirements this season, culminating in him only being 17th in the Drivers' Championship, but the pace is definitely there. While his record against his teammate doesn't look great, the pace between the two of them is a lot closer than what the numbers suggest. I would be surprised if he doesn't get a seat in 2023. C tier for Zhou. Now that you have the final drivers ranking, let's move on to the teams and see how they did in the season so far. Alfa Romeo. One of the positive surprises of the season so far, Alfa Romeo had a very strong start to the season. Picking up Bottas was definitely the right move for them, and while the pace has dropped off with the team not being able to score points in any of the last 4 races, they solidified themselves as the 6th best team on the grid. B tier is earned for the Italian team. AlphaTauri. One of the disappointments of the season. As I've mentioned with both of their drivers, the pace of the AlphaTauris drastically dropped off compared to last year. Going from a midfield team to one of the back markers is never a good sign for the future. They haven't scored a point since Gasly P5 in Baku, and there still hasn't been a race where both cars scored points. D tier for Red Bull's junior team. Alpine. Alpine have been the consistent midfield team of the season so far, scoring points at every race bar Imola. The pace of the car is there, and Alonso has shown flashes of the car being capable of even more. Other than a Piastri drama, nothing has really gone wrong for Alpine this season, and they find themselves in P4 of the Constructors' Championship. A tier. Aston Martin, another disappointing team. A lot of expectations were placed on them, and it's fair to say they've under-delivered. The team is in P9 of the Constructors' Championship thanks to Vettel pushing the car to its limits. Imola is the only race where both cars scored points. D tier behind the AlphaTauris. Ferrari. It's really hard to describe Ferrari's season. Not because it has been that amazing, but rather because of the clown show it has been so far. For the first 3 races of the season, it seemed like they were going to run away with the championship this year. But then a mix of reliability and horrible decisions put them in the position they are today. Despite having the quickest qualifying car and Red Bull having the slight edge on Sundays, the Italian team find themselves 97 points behind the Red Bulls. C tier considering the potential of the car. Haas, another positive surprise of the season. It was public knowledge that Haas were focusing their efforts on a 2022 car during last season. And despite off-track drama, they found themselves fighting with the midfield, earning points here and there. A solid season and a step in the right direction for the American team. C tier. McLaren. McLaren haven't picked up where they were last season and only fighting with Alpine for P4 thanks to Lando's heroic efforts. Despite being the only team outside of the top 3 to earn a podium, they still have 3 races where none of their drivers earn points. B tier for the walking team. Mercedes. When looking at previous seasons, Mercedes would have to be in D tier, with the team still looking for their first win after 13 races. But when comparing to where they have been in the beginning of the season, the improvement is clear and the team is picking up podiums on the regular. The last 2 races has seen both of their drivers step on the podium, and there is a very real possibility that they catch Ferrari, as they are only 30 points behind the Italian team. A tier. Red Bull. Other than the early season reliability issues, Red Bull haven't put a foot wrong and are profiting of Ferrari's constant mistakes. With the 97-point lead, the Milton Keynes team should earn their first Constructors' Championship since 2013. S tier. Williams. Unfortunately for Williams, this season isn't any better. Some could even argue it's even worse than last season, as Haas aren't the clear worst team anymore. The rebuilding process is longer than initially thought, and for the team to be back where they once were, Nicky Latifi needs to be sacked. D tier. Let me know in the comments below what you think of my ranking. What did I get right and what did I get wrong? If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.